Cabinet reiterated its commitment to ensure that allegations of corruption relating to COVID-19 procurement are swiftly investigated by law enforcement agencies such as the Special Investigating Unit. Those implicated must and should be severely punished. And money stolen from the state by unscrupulous companies and individuals must indeed be recovered. Cabinet is also pleased with the progress made by the Committee of Ministers appointed a few weeks ago by Cabinet and President, chaired by Justice and Correctional Services Minister Ronald Lamola. The team of ministers was expected to coordinate the compilation of all the COVID-19 procurements and make it accessible to the public. Perhaps we should at this stage again reiterate that this committee was not established to investigate anything, because it doesn't have the capacity nor the powers to investigate. People with the powers to investigate any wrongdoing in the procurement are our law enforcement authorities. This committee was established to compile, as we say in our statement, what has been procured throughout the length and breadth of government as it relates to PPEs, whether at local government level by our municipalities, whether at provincial levels, whether at national departments levels, or whether in our state-owned entities. Indeed, this committee has been able to compile all that information, and working together with Treasury, this committee has been able to put all that information for people to access it in the National Treasury's website. And if you want to access all that information of what has been procured, by which national department, by which provincial department, by which SOE, at what prices, you can go to www.treasury.gov.za. And we can assure all South Africans that all that information is now there. Where there are still shortages of information, we are pursuing those who are very, very few, who have not given us all the information we need, so that that information is made available to the public. That was the essence why this committee was created, to compile all the information around procurement of PPEs throughout the length and breadth of our country, and secondly, make that information available to the public. We have then done so. National Treasury will continue with additional work to refine the submitted information for further processing. Cabinet reaffirms that law enforcement agencies will continue to be responsible for the investigative work, not this committee. Law enforcement agencies will continue to investigate where there is allegation of wrongdoing, and indeed also bring to book any people who might be implicated. The Fusion Center, which coordinates the work of all law enforcement agencies, remain on track to present its first 6-weekly report in the first week of September 2020 to President Cyril Ramaphosa. That is the group of law enforcement agencies that is seized with this matter. They include your SIU, they include your Hawks, they include your NPA. So you have a collaboration of all law enforcement agencies, from those that arrest, from those that prosecute, and those that ensure that we remain in prison if we have done anything wrong. So all of them are now meeting and coordinating together at a place called the Fusion Center here in Johannesburg, where all this information from the various law enforcement agencies is brought together so that indeed they can, in a collaborative way, deal with any malfeasance and any wrongdoing and any fraudulent behavior that emanates from procurement of PPEs, as directed, by the way, by the President, Cyril Ramaphosa.
Well, of course, on Cabinet's agenda is a myriad of issues, corruption really coming to the fore, given the fact that the public is very unhappy about this COVID-19 related corruption that's been taking place. Of course, they discussed other issues around the environment, they discussed issues around appointments and so on. But to just hone in initially on the corruption issue and more, I'm joined by my colleague Samkele Maseko. Thank you very much, Samkele, for joining us. Of course, like I say, Cabinet would have looked at a number of issues, but of course corruption there at the fore.
Indeed, the issue of corruption is dominating the discussions at Cabinet, led by President Cyril Ramaphosa. You're looking at the various allegations that have plagued the government in various provinces. You go to Gauteng, you go to Limpopo, you go to Mpumalanga, you go to the Eastern Cape, of issues of tender irregularities when it comes to the awarding of these particular tenders of personal protection equipment that is being procured by government. You go to how Dr. Bandile Masuku, the MEC of Health, has been put on leave of absence, if one may put it like that, basic suspension here in Gauteng. You go to how these allegations have also come to the highest office in the land in the form of the right-hand lieutenant of President Cyril Ramaphosa, Mrs. Kusela Diko, the spokesperson of the president, being also embroiled in these tender irregularities for Royal Paca here in Gauteng. You go to the allegations that have also plagued the MEC of Health in Limpopo, MEC that would be the MEC of Health in that particular province, in the awarding of contracts to the daughter of ANC heavyweight in that province, Florence Radzelani. These are the myriad of issues that are plaguing the government, and it's also going up towards a national level where the Minister of Communications, that would be Stella Ntabeni-Abrahams, has also been implicated in these allegations. And it's alleged that she tried to enforce one of the state-owned entities within that particular department to award the procurement of these personal protective equipment to her husband as company, that would be Tato Abrahams. So these are the varied issues that are going on in Cabinet. You've also had opposition parties bringing about questions in these matters to the government on how the procurement of these tenders went about. Various questions have been asked by the Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters and other political formations within the National Assembly. The President goes into his Q&A session virtually this afternoon to answer these myriad of questions coming from all of these particular political formations, and also within his own ranks of his own MPs and his own political formation, the African National Congress. But government's efforts to fight this particular pandemic has been tainted by those who've had their hands in the cookie jar, in the malfeasance and the corruption that has taken place in the awarding of these contracts in the Eastern Cape. It is alleged that someone who had passed away about a year ago had been awarded this particular contract of PPEs to the tune of R1 million. How does this happen where a particular individual is not even alive gets awarded this particular contract? So these are some of the issues that government is complaining with and grappling with, but it does seem as if those whom are seemingly willing and are wanting to make a quick buck are having their hands in the cookie jar and are looting the state dry when it comes to the awarding of these contracts that are worth millions of rands.
Yeah. Now, of course, Samkele, the good thing about this situation is it's not like the state capture inquiry where people are having to hark back, 5-10 years ago about issues that happened a long time ago. It all happened now. And when we listen to Jackson Mthembu, it seems as though everything is positioned to really catch those people who had their hand in the cookie jar. He talks about the MPA, the SIU, the Hawks. Everybody's involved in trying to bring people to book. So based on that and what you've been hearing on the ground, do you think that we are going to see some prosecutions sooner rather than later?
Have the Hawks clause not been cut out? Do they have the necessary clause to nab and grab those whom are found to be wanting when it comes to the issue of the law, and those who are found to have been having their hands in the cookie jar. The Hawks have received a lot of battering in the past few years, therefore their own internal issues. Law enforcement agencies in the country, in the words of those who are in power, had been hollowed out in the past 10 years that the former president had been in charge, and those whom had been instructed or had the duty to take care of these institutions as their heads have also been found wanting. It's only now that the National Prosecuting Authority under the leadership of Advocate Samkele Maseko is trying to re-engineer itself and recover its reputation as the National Prosecuting Authority, and having successful prosecutions or convictions against those they go after. To date, since she had been appointed to this particular position, no high-profile business person or no high-profile politician who's had their hands in the cookie jar has been prosecuted. You'd go to the past 10 years. One can only remember the name of John Block in the Northern Cape, who's behind bars. Others have not been found to be criminally or successfully convicted in the South African courts of law. The law enforcement agencies in the country also find themselves on the back foot in various occasions, despite them being in this fusion center that the Minister of in the Presidency, Jackson Mthembu, speaks of, where there's a collaboration of all law enforcement agencies, including the SIU Special Investigations Unit, the Hawks, the NPA. They are all there trying to work together to try to bring those who've had their hands in the cookie jar. You've seen the SIU order form or their court papers that they've compiled on a various number of companies and individuals. You're looking at about 20 to 30 companies that I've seen in that court application or affidavit by the SIU, which includes Royal Bata belonging to Kusela Diko's husband, which is also under investigation by the SIU. They also are part of this team that is tasked with updating the president weekly on it comes to the issues of how far these investigations are. We've also got the inter-ministerial team led by the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Ronald Lamula, which is also looking into providing the list of all of the companies and individuals who've scored tenders, whether it be at local government, provincial level and national level, when it comes to the issues of these tenders. Yesterday you had Treasury also issuing out a list of all the companies that have been given tenders that are procuring these PPEs for government, and there was a directive issued by President that all provinces and national government should release a list of how many of these companies gotten these contracts, the tune of these contracts, and the particular individuals belonging to these companies. But also it comes at a time where a number of these companies whom have politically exposed individuals are sitting as directors within these companies. One would look at Tuo Rhodesia in Gauteng, which got contracts worth 2.7 million rands within this particular province. That company has a the daughter of a senior politician within the African National Congress as a director within that company. You go to the children of ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule, whom have scored also contracts of PPEs within the Free State Province. You come to Gauteng, Kusela Diko's husband, the king, non-king, Diko, who scored a contract through his company Royal Bata. You go to Limpopo as well, there's been tender issues there, and then you've got issues around the procurement as well in provinces such as KwaZulu-Natal. Those issues have been raised within that particular province and in the Eastern Cape, but the state as it stands has not successfully prosecuted anyone when it comes to this matter. But this team of this infusion of law enforcement agencies will be briefing the president in the first week of September when it comes to these issues, which is next week, on how far they are with their investigations. But one can only hope that government will successfully prosecute those whom are found to have had their hands in the cookie jar, and it's not only talk and no action by those who are charged with taking care of the public purse, but it seems as if they are those who are just hell-bent on malfeasance and looting of these particular resources meant for the poorest of the poor.
Samkele, you make very good observations around capacity in the law enforcement agencies and your observations around the politically exposed people who have allegedly managed to get contracts through the government. But now, how many months away are the local elections? I mean, it's 6-7 months away. People are hurtful, and they will want to see that people have been brought to book for this. So timing is of greatest urgency right now.
Indeed, timing is of the greatest urgency, not only for those who are in power and those who are seeking to be re-elected when it comes to the local government elections, but one can only ask one question. Where have the law enforcement agencies been all this time? The president spoke about he does not want to hear anything of a COVID commission coming up after South Africa is done, or the world is done fighting with this particular pandemic. But it's only about It's only about 3-4 months in, and you've already got large scales of alleged corruption taking place. One can only imagine what is going through the mind of the president, where he spoke about not wanting a COVID commission, but the levels of corruption or alleged corruption that has been taking place in the awarding of these contracts is alarming, and it also knocks in the highest office in the land, just next to him in the office of his own spokesperson, who's alleged to be involved in the illegal procurement or getting of this particular contract in Gauteng. It only tells you that the governing party goes into their own Special National Executive Committee meeting, and at the top of mind of that NEC meeting is the issue of corruption that is plaguing and bedeviling the governing party. And you've got various issues also taking place at various municipalities. One can only go to Mpumalanga right now in Standerton. In that particular municipality, you've got allegations of corruption going on within that particular municipality. Residents have taken to the streets, barricaded roads. They've decided to throw out all the rubbish onto the roads of that particular municipality. That area and that municipality has been brought to a standstill. They've been writing a number of letters to Luthuli House and to the government to try to get the minister to intervene, to get corruptive governance and traditional affairs to come onto the fore and assist them within that particular municipality. You go to the Northwest Province, you'd remember when Supra Muhammapilo was still the premier of that particular province. Various municipalities were placed under administration by the Kokta minister, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. You'd go to the issues of various municipalities across the country. In the words of the governing party as well, many of these local municipalities are simply unviable and have no capacity to generate their own revenue to keep them afloat. A vast majority of them are failing to even keep up with their payments to the power utility, ESCOM, which is also a big hole where a lot of government resources are being wasted and is being looted. They also have instituted their own legal cases against those whom have allegedly stolen about 3.5 billion rands from that power utility. They're trying to recoup that money from the likes of their former acting GCEO and head of generation, Machela Koko, their former GCEO, that would be Brian Molefe, the Gupta brothers, the former Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, that would be Msebenzi Zwane. So South Africa goes into the local government elections, should they take place next year, despite the IEC saying it's all systems go, and they're preparing for those local government elections next year. You've got issues plaguing municipalities, such as in the capital city, Tshwane, where you've got about 200 million rands worth of funds being paid to ghost employees within that particular municipality. You go to issues of corruption that have also dogged the eThekwini municipality, their own issues that led to the removal of their own mayor and corruption taking place within the waste management of that particular municipality in the era of Zandile Kumete. You go to Mangaung, which has also basically been put and lowered and downgraded by one of the ratings agencies and had their own mayor removed about a week ago in a vote of no confidence, where the ANC voted with the Freedom Front Plus to remove the ANC mayor within that particular municipality. So South Africa goes into the local government elections with a very dim picture of the economic viability and the corruption taking place in these municipalities across the country. Not only within those municipalities, you've also had problems when it comes to the municipality run or metro run by the Democratic Alliance within the Western Cape. That would be the city of Cape Town, which ultimately led to Patricia de Lille, that former mayor of that particular municipality, being removed by the Democratic Alliance. And we've had the Bowmans and Gefilitz report looking into allegations of corruption that are taking place in the era of Patricia de Lille in that municipality. And there is no political party that can claim that where we govern cleanly. As it stands, or the Democratic Alliance and the African National Congress are dogged with allegations of corruption. You are only left with the likes of the economic freedom fighters who have not yet been in government, who have not tasted being in government, and you can't say they are suffering from the sins of incumbency, as opposed to other political formations like the African National Congress, Democratic Alliance, and the Inkatha Freedom Party in KwaZulu-Natal, which their own municipalities have also been plagued with issues. You go to Ndumeni, where their own particular municipality in that area has also been removed in the past year and a half.
Yeah, look, the picture you sketch is horrifying. But my question is, in terms of the letter that the president wrote to the ANC comrades, the ANC party, Are they on the same page as what he was saying, that we need to root out corruption and anybody who has interest in this and that? Do you think people are going to come to the party and put their hand up and say, look, this is what I'm doing, this is what I've done?
Has the ANC ever been on the same page since that Stellenbosch conference in 2002? I doubt, because you look at the various realignments that are taking place within the various interest groups within the African National Congress. They go into this weekend's special National Executive Committee with some of their own leaders whom have allegedly brought the party into disrepute. You've got the likes of Bongani Bongo, who's been at the center of an allegation that he tried to bribe Advocate Vanara, and that particular case is in the one of the Western Cape courts. You go to how some ANC leaders want him to be removed. You go to the Deputy Minister of Finance, David Masondo, who's got his own allegations with the Integrity Commission recommending that he step aside. You go to Nomvula Mokonyane, whose secrets are being unveiled and revealed in the State Capture Commission of Inquiry around her 40th birthday, a relationship with African Global Operations, now formerly trading as Busasa. You go to the issues of ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa around his CR17 campaign. A letter was penned by another individual within the African National Congress who's got issues hanging over his head, or a dark cloud hanging over his head, with hitting people with jar vases in the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality, and a court case and a conviction over his own self, and he's going through an appeal. As it stands, that would be Andile Lungiza. You've got Ace Magashule. He's got his own issues of the Estina Dairy Farm. He's got his issues of the asbestos contract. He's got issues of his sons now allegedly benefiting from this particular PPE COVID-19 contracts. You've got the allegations with Gwede Mantashe and his relationship with Bosasa. You've got Didi Mabuza and allegations of corruption that have also plagued him in his own province, Mpumalanga, even though he's never been found guilty by any court of law. That includes all of these ANC leaders. You've got Tony Yengeni, who's also had a conviction around the Mercedes-Benz he had procured some years ago, and he ended up spending time in prison. So the ANC is dogged with a lot of allegations of corruption. You go to KwaZulu-Natal, where they are now placed with an issue of Zandile Kumete, who's just been promoted to the provincial legislature, and within that particular portfolio committee in that province of Kokta. She's an ordinary backbencher of the ANC in that province in the legislature. She was removed through allegations of corruption of worth 430 million rands of the waste tender in that particular province. You've got a myriad of issues plaguing the governing party. You go to the Northwest Province, none of the municipalities are viable. Then you've got the factional battles taking place within the African National Congress. There are those whom are sympathetic to Ace Magashule, the Secretary General, who feel as if the issue of the Integrity Commission's recommendations that leaders must step aside is being used as a weapon against those who are against President Cyril Ramaphosa and who want to remove President Cyril Ramaphosa. So the ANC is involved in a battle for the soul, if one may say, of the African National Congress. Then you've got another core that is seemingly coming up and is hitting the ground running and is mobilizing for the next upcoming conference of the African National Congress. That particular core or interest group is seemingly aligned to the Deputy President David Mabuza and the Treasurer General Paul Mashatile. You can see the various political machinations taking place within the governing party when it comes to that. You've got issues plaguing the home province of, or perceived home province of President Cyril Ramaphosa, where his parents were born in Venda, that would be Limpopo, where a battle is also raging within that province against those who are implicated in issues of looting of VBS, even though the South Gauteng High Court ruled that the particular segment which speaks about Denim Caesar being the kingpin of looting and getting municipalities to invest in that particular bank being expunged by the court. There's an appeal currently taking place by the South African Reserve Bank when it comes to that particular matter. So the ANC will also be debating that matter this weekend. And issues of corruption have not only plagued those whom are perceived to be part of the state capture project in the country, it also now plagues those whom campaigned on the ticket of clean governance going into the 2017 NASREC conference of the African National Congress, which brings and begs about the question, is any particular interest group or core or faction within the African National Congress as clean as they claim to be, or are they just all tainted and cannot act in the best interest of the country, but only act in the best interest of the interest groups or the factions that are there within the governing party? But definitely, the president goes into this National Executive Committee or Special NEC of the African National Congress at the backdrop of that letter he penned down to ANC members and leaders, appealing to them to speak to their conscience if they have got allegations of corruption against their heads. They must submit themselves to the Integrity Commission of the party, seek to clear the names. If the Integrity Commission is not happy with their their explanations, they must brace themselves to go through the internal disciplinary processes of the African National Congress. One also brings about the question, is the ANC's National Disciplinary Committee still even active? Who chairs it? As you've got Spielman in the Northern Cape, who has had racist comments against the colored community, if one may put it like that, in the Western Cape, in the Free State rather. He's just been brought back to his position, and he's basically freely to do his work as the mayor there and actively participate as a member of the African National Congress, even though the ANC takes a dim view on the issue of racism, especially their Deputy Secretary General. She's been very vocal on the issue of racism and tribalism that is seemingly ravaging South Africa and ravaging the African National Congress. The ANC, despite the president issuing that letter of leaders appealing to their conscience and stepping aside, you've got Zandile Kumete, who's just been promoted to a senior position within the governing party. So it seems as if it's an animal farm when it comes to the implementation of this particular conference resolution of 2017, where it clearly stipulates that if any leader is alleged to be involved in issues of corruption and is tainting the name of the African National Congress, that particular leader must submit themselves to the Integrity Commission, seek to clear their name, and voluntarily step aside in the quest for them to clear their name. And after they've been cleared, they can only come back to their respective positions. But it only seems a select few have particularly done and implemented that conference resolution. And Ace Makashule says it categorically clear that he will never step aside on issues of allegations, despite there being a conference resolution.
All right, Samkele, clearly not on the same page. Thank you so much. That was my colleague Samkele Maseko just giving us his observations on the cabinet briefing and the forthcoming NEC meeting. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa and